reshare this later on. Megan, I just wanted to say thank you so much for being um, willing to come on and have this discussion with us today. We're all kind of unclear what's happening in August, and it's really our job to know this information. And it's malpractice if we're out there having conversations and don't really know how to discuss what's going on with these changes in August. So, just getting more clarity. I know offices like, Ridgewood and Wayne are having meetings this week to discuss it, and definitely please talk to us about those dates as well. However, I think it's great to have you on this call where you can really break it down based on, what you're seeing and what you're hearing. So I'm going to be quiet and just hand the floor over to you and just say my gratitude today is that you are on the call and you're always willing to come and speak. And when you speak, Megan, people listen. Like the last time you were on here, I had a few people reach out to me and say that was a very powerful call. So I appreciate you and thank you for coming back today to share with us. So if you can just briefly introduce yourself, I am going
Can I
to
just
highlight
share
you.
my screen, if you don't mind?
No, you can't. Of course you can. Let me get that set up here.
Thank you. So hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Megan OBrien. I know majority of you just from being in DRED's kind of ecosystem and world. So obviously, if you're on this call, you're probably a great realtor and you really care. So it's really important today that I'm going to be very concise with my words. And if anyone knows me, knows that I like to gab. So I'm going to do my best to keep it tight. We have a lot to cover. So I'm going to share my screen with you all right now. We can see this, right?
Yep.
Okay, cool. All right. So starting off, this bill that we're going to be discussing today, the Real Estate Consumer Protection Enhancement Act, this is for the state of New Jersey, right? So this is separate from the Department of Justice settlement that we're talking about August 17th. Governor Murphy signed this, I believe, last Thursday, and this is affecting only New Jersey. It is in compliance with the DOJ ruling. I wouldn't say it's related to, maybe like a distant cousin. So if anything were to change in the Department of Justice ruling, it would not change anything that we're discussing here today. So I just wanted to start off with that. So we're going to discuss the bill, and then I also am going to briefly discuss why you need to be involved in the legislative process as a realtor. So I'm going to jump right in so we don't have a ton of time. One of the first changes is sellers must provide a fully completed property condition disclosure form before buyers sign a contract. So a seller disclosure, we all know, we give it to our seller. Do they always complete it prior to the listing? No. Should they? Yes. What this does is making it a requirement that it is to be completed and given to the buyer prior to them signing a contract. So why I think this is great. This protects buyers by making timely disclosure a requirement, and this then allows them to make an informed decision, right? Obviously, the real estate market's moving very quickly. We have to move fast. So giving this to buyers right away will allow them to read through it and kind of make an informed decision on their offer based on the material defects that the seller disclosed. This also is protecting sellers, right? We are in a very heavy as is market right now where we are encouraging or suggesting, we should be suggesting, that buyers limit or even waive their inspections. In a world where we're doing this at a very high level, I can imagine when a buyer buys the house, they close on it, they waive or limit inspections, they discover an issue that the seller should have disclosed but didn't. That is just ripe for a lawsuit. So I'm hoping that this will prevent that. It's going to protect buyers, it will protect sellers, and it's going to protect us as realtors to make sure that we express that things were disclosed and the importance of that. Where there's going to be a huge opportunity, which I think everyone on this call is going to love, is I would imagine most of you here are encouraged to call for sale by owners. Is that correct? Right, David?
Correct.
Where this is a huge value add is this applies to a private sale as well. So if you have a FSBO in the pipeline and you've been trying to follow up and show your value and you're kind of not sure what the next call is, this is an excellent opportunity to call them. Let them know that this change that's happening August 1st will apply to them as well. And they have to disclose material defects in their home. So huge value add for FSBOs. This is not just applying to realtors. This is just a real estate transaction in the state of New Jersey. So really happy with that. Go show your value and why they have to hire an agent. 2, listing agents will be required to explicitly disclose who they represent at open houses. So there's going to be required verbiage signage at open houses. it either has to be presented at the door or at the sign-in sheet. It's a little long. I'm going to give you guys the gist. So essentially, it's just disclosing that the person at the open house represents the seller and is acting in their best interest. Any information a prospective buyer gives the agent will not be considered confidential. Buyer is entitled to representation, and they are required to disclose their representation at the sign-in sheet. So why I think this is great, it educates the consumer on representation and fiduciary duties they get with a realtor, right? This protects buyers from disclosing private information that may hurt their future negotiations. And for us agents hosting the open houses, this is great because buyers must disclose if they have an agency agreement at the sign-in sheet. I'm sure we've all talked to buyers, we've asked the question, and it's not until 4 days later that they, oh, well, I actually do have a realtor. So this is kind of forcing everyone in the proper way, I think, to disclose their relationships. What's important to know as well, in the signage, the verbiage that we have to post, it's essentially saying, today I'm wearing my seller hat. If you are unrepresented, I can absolutely wear my buyer hat. I can also wear my disclosed dual agent hat if you're interested in this particular property. And I can also wear my new designated agency hat. If you don't know what designated agency is, do not panic. It is new, and we're going to be discussing that next. So essentially, it's just relaying to the consumer, this is how I'm representing the public today. It's a seller's agent. I can represent you if you'd like. But just understand that I do not have to keep what we discuss confidential. And if you do have a realtor, please disclose that. So all in all, I think a good thing there. So I mentioned designated agency just before. I'm going to spend a little bit more time on this because I want everyone to try to grasp it a bit more. So designated agency enables a brokerage to appoint an agent to either side of a transaction at the client's request is now permissible. So I'm going to paint you a scenario. You have a listing. You are the listing agent. An unrepresented buyer calls you and is interested in that property. When you discuss with that buyer a disclosed dual agency and the limitations that come with that, right? Because when you're a disclosed dual agent, you cannot promote the interest of one party over the other, and you cannot give anybody an advantage, right? So you are kind of limited in how we represent that client. So when you're discussing agency and either your seller, because they might have an issue with it, or that buyer doesn't feel fully comfortable signing up to have some of their fiduciary duties taken away or limited, we now have another choice to give the consumer if they are uncomfortable with that. So what this would do is your brokerage would be able to designate one agent to the listing agent and then designate another agent to that buyer. And what's great is that in this scenario, both party, the buyer and the seller, maintains full fiduciary duties that they get from that agent. So this is awesome because if someone is uncomfortable with disclosed dual agent, we offer them another way to buy that house. Because what if it is the best offer for our seller, right? We get to keep them within our brokerage. They don't have to leave us, but we are offering a scenario in which everybody is getting their agent to fully fight for their rights. And I think in a world where we might potentially see buyer agents being paid by the buyer and sellers agents being paid by the seller, potentially, I think the disclosed dual agency might get more tricky in those scenarios. So having another option, designated agency, is awesome. I would check with your brokerage because your brokerage might have certain policies and how they want to handle this. But all in all, I'm really, really happy that we now have a new form of agency. It will be updated on the CIS, and there will be a new informed consent to designated agency form. They're not out yet, but they're working very, very hard to get that ready for August 1st. All right, so I guess 4. All real estate licensees will be required to use brokerage agreements, which outline services they will provide to all clients over the course of a respective transaction. So we all know that in order to represent a seller, we have to have a signed listing agreement. For some insane reason, we never applied that rule to buyer's agents. We have been taking buyers out, taking time away from our family, away from other clients to show buyers houses without really having anything that ties us to each other. So now this is going to require, whether you represent a buyer or a seller, there's going to be a requirement of a signed agency agreement. So for a buyer agreement, it's going to require disclosing your agency. So how are you servicing them as a buyer's agent, designated agent, disclosed dual agent, the commission you charge, and the terms of the agreement. Obviously, this is great. This is protecting you as a buyer, a buyer's agent rather. And more importantly, this is leveling the playing field because everybody is required to do this. So if you have a buyer and you're at that buyer consultation and they don't want to sign an exclusive or non-exclusive buyer agency agreement, and they say to you, well, I don't want to work with the realtor that's going to make me sign this. You can gently tell them and educate them that this is a requirement. Obviously, you should be leading with value and the duties they obtain from you by being their realtor. But if anyone is feeling a little unsure, I'm sure it will help them understand that this is now a requirement by all agents, all brokerages in the state of New Jersey to have an agreement when representing buyers and sellers. So I think that was a long time coming on that. Other notable items in the bill: brokerages can receive compensation from either or the buyer and the seller. So prior to this bill, a brokerage was only able to receive compensation through one party. Again, in a world where we might have buyers paying partially the fee or paying all of the fee that we charge, it would be a huge roadblock if we were not able to have a disclosed dual agent situation where we're getting paid by two separate parties. That is no longer an issue. So huge win there. I'm really happy they were able to turn that around so quickly. Another notable item is our CE credits will now require 1 hour on agency. Agency is like truly the foundation of so much of what we do in this business. So I think all of us having that refresher every 2 years on agency, especially now that we've added a new agency type, is great. So those are the main points in the bill. I suggest you guys read through it. It's, can be a little legalese, but it's not too difficult. All in all, I think a lot of really great stuff in the bill. As D-Rad mentioned, I am going to be doing a deep dive on this July 29th from 11 to 12:30 at KW Prosperity. We're doing this in person and on Zoom. If you have any questions, let me know. I'm happy to give you more information on that event. So we wrapped up the bill portion, but when I started the call, I had said that we're going to discuss the bill, and we're also going to discuss why you need to be involved in the legislative process as a realtor. So I want to ask everyone here a question. If we do not advocate for home ownership, who will? If we as realtors do not advocate to our local representatives about bills that could hurt or help home ownership, or the struggles buyers are facing or sellers are facing, who's going to do that? The answer is no one, right? We are in a world right now where we are very fragmented, and it's getting more so, where we are all starting to feel that we don't have any value in being a united group as an industry. And what really scares me about this is if that starts to happen at a more rapid pace and we withdraw and we just focus solely on our own business and focus on our own world and our own brokerage, who's going to be advocating for home ownership? The option is that no one is. But what might possibly happen is that somebody else will, and they might have a fiduciary duty to their bottom line, not to what's best for the consumers. We have to be very, very clear that we are so strong together. We are boots on the ground, right? We are directly dealing with the public every single day. We're driving on the roads. We know the conditions of the roads. We know what schools people are dying to get into and what schools are struggling. We know who's getting laid off and in what industries. And we know the pain that investors are feeling, sellers are feeling, buyers are feeling. We know the pain that our seniors are feeling to keep their housing as they age. All of these things are big economic indicators that we have total locked in finger on the pulse with. And that makes us extremely fierce advocates for homeownership and for this country in general. So my feelings are this: if you love this industry and what homeownership can accomplish for Americans and really anybody in the world, then you have to view your involvement in the legislative process as a non-negotiable. And that doesn't mean that you abandon your business, you don't spend time on that, but you have to look at it as a complement to your business. Imagine you have dreams of building a really big business, right? You want to grow your team, you want to change the lives of your clients. But in that time that you're so focused on building your business, you're disconnected from what's happening in the industry. And while you're focused on all these things, you don't even realize that independent contractor status has been removed. And now your entrepreneurial spirit, and the reason a lot of us got into this business, is crushed and replaced with an employment contract. Now, thankfully, we just settled that case in New Jersey. We did protect independent contractor status. That was huge. And yet I'm sure most of us didn't even really hear about that. So I just want to reiterate, if you're planning on building a lasting business, a lasting legacy in this business, your involvement in the legislative process should be seen as a non-negotiable. So I'm hoping some of you understand why you should get involved. Now I want to talk about how you should get involved. So the first baby step, which was my first baby step, was investing time in your local real estate association. So that would be Greater Bergen Realtors, North Central. On this call today is Nick Esposito. He is president-elect of Greater Bergen Realtors, which means next year he will be the president of the board. He's a huge reason I've gotten involved and even been exposed to any of this information. So if you feel that kind of dipping your toe into the association and learning more about this is the right path for you, please reach out to him. You can reach out to me, and we can kind of educate you on the different committees that are there that you can get involved in. I am the chair of professional development, and a lot of the things that I just discussed, we're talking about at a very high level in our committee. Sally Ponchak is a member of our committee at Greater Bergen Pro Dev, and she's been an awesome member as well. So that would be my first suggestion of dipping your toe and getting more involved in this. The second would be to attend an NAR event. The one that I suggest would be NAR legislative meetings. They're usually held in May. And it's really cool because the event to go to is free. The conference is free. You just have to pay for your lodging, your food, your travel, all that. But that is where we as realtors go to Capitol Hill and advocate for homeownership. And we are talking with people, Josh Gottheimer, and we're expressing our concerns and some of our fears about things that are coming down the pipe that they may not even know has a huge impact on homeownership. So that is another one I suggest. And lastly, I strongly suggest that you invest in RPAC. If you're not sure what RPAC is, it stands for Realtors Political Action Committee, and it helps in the fight to ensure good laws are passed and bad ones are defeated. So RPAC works by staying engaged with the legislature's agenda, building relationships with key politicians on local, state, and federal levels. RPAC also works with state agencies to make sure proposed rules take into consideration the views of property owners and realtors. I think currently, and Nick, if you know a little more, feel free to jump in. This town of Leonia right now is kind of going through some issues with short-term rentals. So the New Jersey Realtors and Greater Bergen Realtors has sent a letter just voicing our support and some concern. I think one of the suggestions that we voiced was the town having a very specific definition for short-term rental. So we kind of understand. If you're involved in your town and you know of something that is impacting, the values of the homes or impacting homeownership or renters or anything, if you let NJ Realtors and your board know, they are going to help you. They will make calls, they'll write letters. They just can't help us if we don't tell them what we know. As I mentioned before, we are boots on the ground. We should all be boots on the ground in our local towns as well. One, it's a great way to network for your business and meet people in your community, but also it allows us to advocate for it. So those are the suggestions that I have. There are two events that I'm going to gently suggest you consider attending. One is July 31st, and it's the RPAC Summer Bash. So if you hearing about RPAC has kind of piqued your interest and you want to learn a little more, on July 31st, we're going to have a super fun food truck event. We're going to have hula hoop, and it's going to be a really fun event. $55 will get you food from each food truck. There's going to be drinks, games, and that will go towards your Circle of Excellence point. So if you're looking to beef up your application, investing $100 into RPAC is a great way to do that. So that is July 31st. And then August 1st, the Professional Development Committee at Greater Bergen Realtors will be hosting a buyer agency agreement class. The speaker and instructor is Rhoda Moss Latimer. I'm sure many of you may know her. She's a really great instructor. She's going to be conducting a SWOT analysis. So that's strengths, weaknesses, opportunity, threat analysis on your ability to relay the importance of a buyer agency agreement. And we're going to be doing what D-Rad loves most, some role play. So if you're feeling a little anxious about getting these agreements signed, I strongly suggest you come to that as well. I also created like a one sheet that I can put in the chat of the key points of the bill and just these events that I mentioned and links to register. And that's really all I had. I know I talked for like 20 minutes straight, but I just wanted to give you guys a quick update. And if you have any questions, let me know. And thank you, David, for having me on. And thank you to everyone for hearing me yap for so long.
Well, FYI, there are a couple questions in the chat. Thank you for being here.
Boy.
Nick, thank you for being here. Like Ira said, we got some cheap royalty in the house.
Ira's very involved. Ira is very, very involved. He was a speaker on a panel. So Ira gets it, and you get to hang out with cool people like me, Nick, and Ira. Who doesn't want to get more involved in that?
That's right. And Orly and Ira were saying in the chat, make sure we're donating. We got to donate. So
invest, yes,
we have to. So you had a couple questions. One was, hold on, Ira. Where is it? Where is it? Oh, we had a lot of comments in here.
Orly, these are events at Greater Bergen Realtor. So I'll give you guys the address. It's in Satterbrook, our headquarters. I don't know if you're in GBR, Orly, or if you're North Central. But I'll send out the information. I can.
And if you send me the one sheet, I'll post it in our WhatsApp group. So if a buyer comes to our open house, should we be asking them to see the agreement? Is that something they're going to have to show that they actually have a signed buyer's agency agreement?
So I'm not sure that we have to ask for it. I think it's going to be one of these things where we're going to be learning as we go through it. I suggest like, okay, do you have an exclusive buyer agency agreement signed? I think by their facial expression, you'll probably get a good idea if that's accurate. Right. I think we're also going to have to give everyone a little bit of grace as we go through these changes. It's not like we're going to snap our fingers and we're all going to be experts overnight. But I would really be coaching your buyers. We can only control the people we interact with. So I would really explain to your buyers that there is going to be like a random weird change overnight, what to expect, and to go from there. But I think we're going to be playing it out as it comes.
Couple of other questions. Rhoda, I think you and I talked about this. Rhoda's class will not be videotaped or Zoom. You have to be there live in order to get the information, correct?
Correct. In person.
Yeah. And then Sally has a question, but before that, where can we find the bill? Can you send me the link where I can post that on our group so people can read it? All right, perfect. Sally, you're up. And if you can talk about this Friday too, that'd be great.
Yeah, I don't have a question. I actually have a comment. And Megan impressed upon you the importance of donating to RPAC. Let me tell you some of the things that have happened or not happened because of RPAC. They wanted to tax our commissions, put a state tax on our commissions. RPAC stopped that from happening. I mean, that alone is huge.
Yep.
Right? Yep. They will help on a town basis, but they do a lot of things that helps all of us.
Yep.
So some of the things that have gotten changed or that they wanted to change in this, they managed to say, slow down and let's not go to that extreme. So it's really important that you contribute to them. And I hope you all will every year. It's super important.
Yes.
Oh, and David, you wanted me to talk about Friday. Yeah. So Friday, we're going to do something similar to what Megan did, although we're going to have an hour. So we're going to get into a few more details and a few more questions that have come up. So that is at 10 o'clock on Friday in Ridgewood. I believe that is hybrid. And I've asked also for it to be recorded. I know, Holly, you said you can't be there. I'm quite sure I'm going to make sure it's recorded, so you'll be able to listen to it at your leisure. But it's so much better if you're there in person, because when it's on Zoom and it's a big room in our training room, and when people talk and you're on Zoom, you can't hear them. You don't know what people are asking. So it's much, much better to be there in person.
I agree with that. I agree. Kathy, you had a question too. And thank you, Sally. Where's Kathy? Is she here?
Yes. David, you want me to
Yeah. Yep. And then I'll wrap
Hi.
it up with Brenda.
Sure. Question. I just want clarity on this. So quite often, we might be talking to a buyer and they say, oh, I want to go work directly with the listing agent. But now with the new ruling or requirement, wouldn't a listing agent also need to get a buyer's agreement to ensure they get paid? So it's not like a buyer is going to circumvent having to pay compensation if the seller's not offering compensation, right?
Yeah. And I think the best way to combat a buyer that wants to go right to the seller is read to them aloud, disclose dual agent on the CIS, and let them see if they want to consent to that. Because the perception is they're going to get a better deal. But the reality is we're limiting how we can advise them. But yes, they can't circumvent it. That's, again, this is like why it's great. It's leveling the playing field.
Love that. And Nick, go ahead. Unmute. You're up.
Just another thing I wanted to mention, at Greater Bergen, August 6th and August 7th, this year, the National Association of Realtors is offering the Accredited Buyer Representation Program. So August 6th and 7th is free to members. It's a designation, and it's being updated according to the lawsuit. Megan, really great job articulating all this information. It's so important for us to stay involved. As I think that what Megan opened up with, or maybe it was in the middle of her presentation, was, if not us, then who? We are on the front lines. We are within our communities. We're working boots on the ground. It's so important for us to voice our opinions. And the process isn't perfect, but if we don't step up, it's not going to go the right way. So, Megan, great job. And D-Red, great platform for this to take place. Appreciate it.
The link I just
Thanks
sent to the group,
here.
the Google Docs, Nick does have, so it does have a link if you want to do the ABR designation. And there's links to other stuff. So I have it in there, and I sent the bill link as well. But if you want to get your ABR, I did have it in there with the time, so you can register for that. But yeah, it's free. Megan. Free, definitely do it. Go for it.
One last final question before we wrap it up with Brenda. How does the change affect our current buyers? If we're working with someone right now and they still haven't bought a house and August 1st comes around, we just have to have them re-sign the new paperwork. What's the process there?
If you have a buyer agency agreement, you're good, right? If you don't, you're going to have to get one.
Okay. So nothing new they need to sign. Just the old agreement's great. Okay, Michelle, that's your answer. All right, perfect. Megan, thank you. Every time you come, you bring so much value. And if you come and you bring the royalty with you, you're always welcome back.
Thank you.
No, it was great. And I like the way you explain things. And thank you for sending the bill so people can read it over. And if anything ever comes up that you want to cover, Megan or Nick, if there's something that you feel like the real estate community needs to know about, just reach out to me, man. You always have a spot here on the show. And I'd love for you to come back and share any information with us. Thank you. Brenda, I want to wrap up with you. Are you back in town, Brenda? You ready to give us our word of the day?
Good morning.
Morning.
Yes, here we go. So life is about moving forward, accepting changes in time and people, looking forward to what makes you stronger, better, and more complete. So they make this Tuesday a problem-free day. Have a great day, guys.
I love it, Brenda. There we go. Problem-free in the house. All right. Well, I'm going to let you guys go because we're like 9 minutes over. However, I felt like it was worth going over because Megan was dropping some really good information and you guys had questions that needed to be answered. I do want to shout out because I'm looking here on the